Getting married is one of the happiest days in a person's life. Two people coming together to affirm their love and commitment to each other, and promising to take care of each other for the rest of their lives. However, some people skip past the vows, only taking into account the last section, "Till death do us part." Number 5. Mary Elizabeth Brooks was described by her parents and those around her as rebellious and without morals. For the 1600s, Mary's behavior was scandalous and brought great shame to her family. In 2021, this behavior is viewed very differently, but at the time, Mary was the talk of Dorchester and seen as a woman who couldn't be tamed. Mary was born in Dorchester, England in 1687 to Richard and Elizabeth Brooks, a couple with high expectations for their children. Richard and Elizabeth did everything within their power to ensure that Mary received a good education, but neglected to teach her how a woman should behave. After realizing that their daughter was acting out, they sent her to Exeter in hopes that she would learn a thing or two and come back a changed woman. Sadly, this didn't happen, and Mary spent her time at dance schools, showering her friends with expensive gifts and getting up to no good. The locals of Exeter began writing letters to Mary's parents, complaining about her behavior and demanding that something be done about it. It was at this point that Mary's parents made the drastic decision to marry her off, hoping that the responsibilities of a married life would finally make her settle down. After months of searching, they finally found a man who was suitable to marry their wayward daughter, Thomas Channing. Both Channing and Mary were displeased about the union, and both voiced their objections. Neither Channing's nor Mary's family backed down, and weeks later, on January 15, 1704, they were wed, despite the two disliking each other. Just 3 months after their wedding, Mary began having an affair with another man, and saw Channing as an obstruction to her freedom. Mary, desperate to get rid of her new husband, slipped mercury into a bowl of rice milk that she had prepared for him. At first, Mary was unsure as to whether her plan had worked, but when Channing awoke on April 18, 1704, violently ill, she knew that everything was slowly falling into place. For the next few days, Channing remained in bed, with his condition worsening by the day. On April 21, 1704, he changed his last will and testament and wrote that under no circumstances should his wife, Mary, receive any of his estate. This small detail sealed Mary's fate, and Channing passed away a few hours later. When the autopsy revealed that Channing had mercury in his system, and it was found that he had written his new wife out of his will, the police immediately turned their suspicions to Mary. Mary protested her innocence, but with the evidence as clear as day, she was convicted and handed down capital punishment. During her trial, Mary declared that she was pregnant, and her punishment was withheld until her child was born in December of 1705. Number 4. Tilly Clement and her parents immigrated to the United States shortly before her first birthday in 1876. Hoping that the United States would be able to provide them with a better life. The family chose to settle in Chicago, Illinois, in an area that was dubbed Little Poland for its high concentration of Polish immigrants. The Clement family quickly settled into their new lives, and everyone adored little Tilly. Everyone in the area said that Tilly's cooking was the best they had ever tasted, and she became a well-known figure in the area. She wasn't just known for her cooking skills, though. Tilly claimed to be a psychic and said that she had dreams which predicted who or what would pass next. Tilly told her neighbors that their beloved dog would sadly be next, and days later it was. Tilly didn't tell them this because she was a psychic. In fact, she had fed the dog arsenic because she couldn't stand its incessant barking. In 1895, Tilly married John Mickiewicz. Not much is known about their marriage, but in 1919, Tilly had another dream predicting the passing of her husband. She confided in one of her friends, telling them that she'd had a psychic dream that her husband would pass away on a specific date. When that day rolled around, everyone was shocked to learn that John had fallen ill in the morning and was gone come evening time. Friends and family noticed that Tilly acted very strangely in the days after her husband's passing. She'd been married for 25 years, and she didn't seem upset or in a state of grief. In fact, she was more interested in collecting his life insurance check than arranging her husband's funeral. Just 2 months later, Tilly married another man, John Ruskowski. Again, Ruskowski was the subject of one of Tilly's psychic dreams, and as predicted, he passed away on the day that Tilly said he would. Tilly married 2 more men in quick succession, with each quickly becoming the subjects of her psychic dreams. By Tilly's 5th marriage to a man named Joseph Clement, people in the local community became very suspicious of her. In 1921, Joseph called for a doctor after he unexpectedly fell very ill. To his surprise, the doctors were suspicious, to say the least. Tests confirmed that he had arsenic in his system, and Tilly was swiftly arrested. Following this shocking discovery, Tilly's husbands were exhumed and were all found to have had large amounts of arsenic in their systems. Tilly Clement was taken to trial and was only found guilty in the case of her 3rd husband. She was subsequently given a life sentence and passed away at the Joliet Correctional Center in Illinois in November of 1936. Number 3. 66-year-old Mary Elizabeth Wilson was known around town as the Merry Widow of Windy Nook. And while the nickname may appear harsh, there was a good reason that the locals were suspicious of Mary. Life up north was tough in the early part of the 20th century. Poverty ran rampant and the country was desperately trying to rebuild itself in the midst of World War I. Mary Elizabeth Wilson was determined to ensure that her life was as happy and fulfilled as possible. And in November of 1914, she married her first husband, John Knowles. Shortly after their marriage, the two bought a house in the village of Windy Nook in Tyne and Wear, with a population of around 3,000 people. To the outside world, their marriage appeared perfect, but behind closed doors, it was a very different story. Shortly after Mary had married John Knowles, her lover, John Russell, moved into the home. Then in 1955, her first husband, John Knowles, mysteriously passed away. Mary wasted no time and quickly married John Russell, who also passed away just months after their wedding. Mary inherited $42, which in today's money is about $870, and the coroner ruled that both men had died of natural causes. Mary showed no interest in playing the part of a grieving wife, and soon found another man to trap into her web. In late 1957, Mary married Oliver Leonard, and astoundingly, he passed away just 12 days after the two tied the knot, leaving her behind $100 or $2,300 in today's money. At this point, people began pointing the finger at Mary and even joked that the undertakers gave her a discount because she was there so often. It was also during this time that Mary picked up the nickname, the Merry Widow of Windy Nook. With each husband, Mary inherited a large sum of money, and everything from their estate, but it seems that this still wasn't enough for her. Her fourth and final husband, Ernest Wilson, also met with a similar fate, and Mary even joked with friends and family that the food from her wedding buffet should be saved and used for Ernest's funeral. This morbid joke put Mary on the police's radar, and just days after Ernest passed, they demanded that all of her husbands be exhumed and subjected to further testing, which revealed high levels of phosphorus. When asked about the exhumations and allegations against her, Mary told a Sunday Sun reporter, quote, "I'm not worried about what they're saying. I can go to the Blessed Sacrament. I'm a Catholic tomorrow. I take no notice of the tittle rattle. It's all jealousy. I'm not worried at all about what's going on." Mary's bravado and arrogance didn't pay off, and in 1958, she was found guilty of 2 counts of murder. She was originally handed down capital punishment. However, due to her age, this was commuted to life in prison. Mary passed away at the age of 70 while imprisoned at HMP Holloway. Number 2. 2000, the start of a brand new decade, filled with hope and promise for some, and fear and worry for others. At the turn of the decade, many people were worried that Y2K would become a reality and take over, wreaking havoc on computers and spiraling us into a new technological age. Meanwhile, the state of Texas was gearing up for a very different event. On February 24th, 2000, Betty Lou Beets became the fourth woman whose capital punishment sentence was carried out since the Supreme Court allowed it to continue in 1976. Betty's life had not been an easy one. Born on March 12, 1937, in Roxborough, North Carolina, Betty was deaf at an early age after contracting measles. Betty claimed that her upbringing was rough, making her a bitter and angry woman. To make matters worse, when Betty was just 12 years old, her mother was hospitalized and Betty took over the care of her younger brothers and sisters. Throughout her life, Betty had multiple husbands who she claimed mistreated her. Each marriage ended with Betty attempting to harm her husbands, causing them to file for divorce and get as far away from her as possible. In 1982, Betty married Jimmy Don Beets, whose surname she carried until her passing. Her marriage to Jimmy wasn't a happy one either, and the relationship was tumultuous, with Jimmy's children from a previous relationship voicing their concerns. Just a year after the couple had married, Betty Lou phoned the Henderson County Sheriff's Office in a state of panic, claiming that her husband was missing from the home that they shared in Cedar Creek Lake. Before making the call, Betty told her son, Robert Branson, to leave the house because she was about to do the unthinkable. Branson told the courts that when he returned home hours later, he found Jimmy on the floor and helped his mother hide his body in the front garden in a wishing well. He also told the court that his mother had then put some of Jimmy's heart medication into his boat and allowed it to float out on Cedar Creek Lake, making it appear that his disappearance had been a terrible accident. Thankfully, the Henderson County Sheriff's Office received a tip in the weeks following Jimmy's disappearance, and they were able to execute a search warrant which turned up the remains of not just one, but two of Betty's husbands, Jimmy Don Beets and her previous husband, Doyle Wayne Barker. Following this shocking discovery, Betty Lou Beets was arrested and charged for Jimmy's case, and handed down a sentence of capital punishment. Number 1. Harold Gentry made a startling confession to his brother Al in mid-1986. Harold told his brother that his marriage to Betty wasn't as perfect as they made it out to be in public. He told his brother never trust a woman, she isn't who she says she is. Al was confused, but when his brother passed in July of that year, he knew that something was wrong. It wasn't until 2008 that the truth about Betty Newmar unraveled and the truth about the Black Widow was known to the public. Between 1950 and 2007, Betty had married 5 different times, with each husband ending up deceased under questionable circumstances. For decades, these deaths went unsolved, and a few of them were chalked up to being accidents. It wasn't until Al Gentry, Harold's brother, put more pressure on the police that the investigation was opened again. In 1986, Harold was found in their Norwood, North Carolina home in what police described as a robbery gone wrong. The house appeared to have been ransacked, and Harold had most likely disturbed the intruder. But this theory didn't sit well with Al, especially after his brother had confided in him just weeks beforehand, telling him not to trust Betty. Despite an intense investigation, Harold's case remains unsolved, but the story of Betty Newmar doesn't end there. On October 25, 2007, Betty's 5th husband, John Newmar, was found deceased and his passing was ruled as natural causes. John's son, John Newmar Jr., heard about Betty's Black Widow reputation and told them that his father's passing was suspicious, causing the police to reopen the investigation. In a stroke of luck, they received a tip from an informant stating that Betty had attempted to hire the help of an ex-police officer to get rid of her husband. The informant claimed that Betty wanted to get rid of John Newmar so that she could claim his $20,000 life insurance policy. The police began to build their case and also found out that despite having purchased a burial plot, John Newmar had been cremated at Betty's request. After delving deeper into Betty's past, they discovered that John Newmar and Harold Gentry possibly weren't Betty's first victims. Following her arrest, she was able to post a $300,000 bail and went on to carry on as normal. Betty Newmar passed away in June of 2011 before a trial date could be set, leaving 5 sets of families without answers. Al Gentry told Oxygen, quote, "She'd been married 5 times before, and all of them are dead. She took all of those secrets to her grave." Al Gentry passed away in 2013 due to a heart attack and never found out what happened to his brother Harold. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.